In 5 months, I lost over 30 pounds and was able to see visible abs for my holiday. I'm going to share with you specifically what I did, but also what I got wrong in previous attempts that stopped me from getting the results that I really wanted. My name's Jack Griffiths. I help men and women go through a complete physical and mental transformation and build a physique that they're truly proud of. I got into this after going through my own transformation, after years of hating the way that I looked, not feeling confident, not liking how I looked in the clothes that I wore. And when I finally built a physique that I actually felt good about and I saw how many different areas it changed in my life, I wanted to help other people go through the same thing. So the first thing I'll talk to you about is my workout schedule. I was training 4 times a week in the gym. I was going in on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays. So I would take Wednesday off and then have the weekends completely away from the gym for rest days, family time, to go out to do whatever I wanted. And the way that I'd structured my training was by doing an upper and lower body split. So on Mondays, I would train completely lower body, Tuesdays upper body, Wednesday would be rest, Thursday would be lower body again, and then Friday upper body to finish off the week's training. The way that I would split up those workouts would be that on the lower body on Monday, I would focus more on like push type exercises, the same with the upper body session on Tuesday, and then on the second set of the lower body and the upper body workouts that I did on the Thursday and Friday, I would aim for more pull based exercises. And when it comes to sets, reps, volume, training intensity, all that sort of areas, I think when I look back at what I used to do in the past, this is where I really got things wrong. And in my experience, seeing how a lot of people train in the gym, speaking to a lot of people, the biggest thing that I see people get wrong is they just do too much volume that really isn't actually making a difference for the goal that they've got. So assuming that you have a goal of seeing physical change, you want to build a toned and defined physique, you want to be able to see muscle perhaps, then you need to be going into the gym and you need to be training hard. And I think what I see a lot of people do, and this is what I was guilty of myself as well, I would go in and I would do 4 or 5 sets on an exercise doing 10 to 12 reps, but every set that I actually did, I was stopping that set when realistically I probably could have done another 4 or 5 reps. So the whole way that I based my training was I would reduce the number of sets that I was doing. I would only do 2 sets instead of doing 3 or 4 or 5. But in those 2 sets that I would do, I would make sure that I was pushing to the absolute max. I was giving absolutely everything I could in that set and really working on training to failure. When we've got a goal that is centered around building muscle, centered around seeing those changes that I just discussed, ensuring that we're training to failure in the gym, i.e. to that point where if I was to say to you, here, do you know what? If you can do another rep, I'll give you £1 million. You would have to say, oh, wow, like, I'm sorry, I can't take the money. That's the level of intensity that you want to be aiming to work towards. And I think from looking at where I was at in the past and seeing how a lot of people train, we're just way off the mark. So I was doing 2 sets. And in terms of sets and reps, how I would structure that, I would do a heavier set and I would do a lighter set. So there's this common like misconception that if you want to build muscle, if you want to tone, you need to be doing higher reps, and if you want to build strength, then you need to be doing lower reps. But actually, it's not really about the number of reps, it's more about the level of intensity and how close you are training to that point of failure that we discussed. So I would do set 1, which would typically be somewhere between 5 and 10 reps. Now, you can do less reps than this and still train to failure. However, I would find that when you're actually going below 5 reps to be able to train to failure, to do it safely on a lot of exercises, that can really be quite difficult. So for me, I found that a minimum starting point of about 5 reps was good. Sometimes I would go 6 to 10 reps instead. So that first set, I would do 6 to 10 reps, pushing myself to failure. I would then allow myself to rest. And when it came to rest, there was no like, oh, it needs to be 1 minute's rest or like 90 seconds rest. Actually, sometimes taking too little rest is counterintuitive for what we want to achieve. So I would just rest for as long as I felt like I needed until I got to a point where I thought, you know what, I'm ready to go at this again 100% to really push myself to the max, however long that was. And then on the second set, I would generally aim for somewhere between 10 and 20 reps. Generally, I would try to be pushing towards the top end range of that. And the reason why I was doing that was I was just trying to train my body to become strong in all different rep ranges. But really what was most important was ensuring that I was pushing myself to failure, going to that point where, like I said, I didn't feel like I was able to continue anymore. Now, if you are someone that feels like you don't know what exercises to do, you don't know how to structure your workouts, you don't know how many sets and reps you should be doing, I've actually created a free workout guide that gives you exactly how to structure your own workout. You can design the workout yourself. You choose from a pre-selected list of exercises that I've put together for you, including video demonstrations, how to set up machines for your own height, everything like that is all covered. And all you have to do is head to the link in the description and you can download that and start using it straight away. The next thing that I'll talk about is my diet. So I was aiming to be eating around 2,000 calories a day. Some days there was perhaps like a little bit of leeway in that, from about 50 to 100 calories either way, but it was generally around that 2,000 calorie mark. Now, when I look at what I got wrong in previous attempts, I had gone through a lot of attempts to try and lose weight in the past to see changes to the way that I looked. I think the biggest thing that I got wrong was trying to change too much too soon when it came to the way that I was eating. Having been through several dieting phases now, I know that when it comes to fat loss, the actual thing that's really going to be relevant in terms of whether we see progress or not is if we are in a calorie deficit. And the thing that will determine that is the amount of calories we consume. Now, I'm not trying to say that food choices aren't important, because of course they are. However, where you can make things a lot easier for yourself, and the mistake that I made in the past was, instead of trying to flip your whole entire life upside down, completely revamp every single meal that you eat in terms of food choices, the menu that you've got for yourself, instead, what you should do is look at the meals that you eat right now, the things that you know works with your lifestyle, it works with your commitment, your work, families, everything else that you've got going on, and see how can you adapt those meals instead so that they're more aligned with what you want to achieve. And that is exactly what I have done with my dieting phases. So whether I'm trying to lose fat and get lean, or whether I'm trying to put on muscle and actually trying to increase my body weight, the meals that I have during those two different phases stay exactly the same. There is literally no change. However, there is just sometimes a slight amendment to those meals, most likely in terms of the portion sizes that I'm having. And that is really the way that you can make dieting super easy for yourself. Have a look at the meals that you're having, see where you can perhaps adjust certain things, maybe improve them, adding vegetable sources, maybe just changing things around a little bit, making sure that you've got a good quality source of protein in all of those meals. But please do not go out and try and completely follow this fancy recipe that you've or plan that you've seen online, because the question you have to ask yourself when it comes to diets, and this is what I say to all of my clients when I set them up with a plan, is if this is something that you look at and you think, okay, cool, I can do this for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and that's the end of it, then that diet has already failed you from the start. This has to be something that will fit into your routine long term, or simply it's not going to work and you're just going to end up potentially losing weight only to then put that back on again in the future. So you have to look at whatever approach you're going to use when it comes to food and ask yourself, is this something that I can do not just for a week, not just for a month, not just for 6 to 8 weeks, but is this a style of eating that I could do for 6 months or potentially even longer? And if the answer is yes, then you're onto a winner. And if the answer is no, then perhaps you just need to have a rethink there. So the way that I was structuring my meals throughout the course of the day is I would start breakfast with oats and protein powder. I would rotate between 3 different flavors of protein powder so that I felt like it didn't ever really get boring because the taste was different. I think sometimes you can find one meal that's good, but if you overeat that all the time, you are just going to get a bit bored of it eventually. So for me, rotating between still having oats, but always having a few different flavors that I would work like between Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then like repeat that cycle. For me, that's always kept me happy. I've never got bored with that. So I would start with oats in the morning. I would typically then go and train after that, as that was what fit my schedule. Lunch for me, I would tend to split, and I think this is a really important tip, I would tend to split my lunch calories between lunch and an afternoon snack. So if you've got, let's just say hypothetically 600 calories that you can have at lunch, instead of having all 600 at lunch, what I would typically try and do, and there's no like right or wrong way in terms of how you break this up, but maybe have 350 at say 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock whenever you eat, but then saving another 200, 250, 300 calories for about somewhere between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. In my experience personally, and from a lot of my clients as well, I know that that sort of mid-afternoon point is where a lot of us get hungry. We experience that sort of lull, that drop in energy in the middle point of the day, and that's the point where you're most likely going to end up going for snacks, picking an option that isn't the right thing for you. So if you have specifically saved calories, you've got a snack prepared, which is what I would do, that would make your life a lot easier. So that lunch that I would have would be based around something high protein, a high protein yogurt. I would be having some fruit alongside that as well. And then in the afternoon, I was looking at another high protein snack that you could have. And there's no right or wrong here. For me personally, I'm actually a vegetarian, but I'm not here trying to tell people don't eat meat or do this or that. You have to pick what's right for you, but it should be something that you like. So it could be something like a chicken breast that you've seasoned, or, you know, for me, I would have low-fat Greek yogurt. I would break up a bit of dark chocolate into there and mix in some protein powder, so it was like a chocolate-flavored yogurt sprinkled with dark chocolate on top of it as well, which I found tasted really, really good and was a great high-protein snack. But spreading those calories out throughout the afternoon, that just helped me with the hunger that I would sometimes experience, because knowing that the next meal that I've got is never too far away meant that even when I was hungry, I wasn't feeling like, oh, it's 2 o'clock and I've got to wait until 6 or 7. I was thinking, right, it's 2 o'clock, but if I can get through till 3 p.m, that will then make things a lot easier for myself. And then you're just always eating small, like regular meals, and that will just really help keep you ticking over. And throughout that period of 5 months, there were obviously events and things that I had to incorporate and manage as well, whether it was family birthdays, weekends out. And I think what I would say is there are times where it's a little bit difficult and you do have to make sacrifice. The approach that I tend to take myself and the approach that I recommend for my clients is you don't have to say no all of the time, but you do have to say no some of the time. But how I would generally approach things was, if I had an event on a Saturday that I was going to go to and it was going to make it really difficult to be able to stick to that same sort of food plan that I'd be eating, I would personally just allow myself to have maybe 100 to 200 additional calories that day, knowing that my progress over that week might just slow down the tiniest amount and I might have a little bit of extra work to catch up on, but I was happy to make that slight sacrifice, but just really ensured that I didn't allow that to carry on. I would just be getting straight back to it the next day. So even if on the Saturday I had an extra 100 or 200 calories, on the Sunday I was straight back to it, and one bad day as such didn't spiral into 2 or 3 or a whole week. So with events, you can absolutely manage it. Another approach you can sometimes consider taking is dropping calories slightly from Monday to Friday for like 100 calories down, for example, and then on the Saturday you've got an additional 500 calories you can use. But for me, I generally didn't do that. I would feel that would impact me quite a lot from a hunger perspective. I would just allow myself to go over slightly and then just ensure that I got straight back to it the next day. And for me, that never ended up going wrong, and I would consistently lose weight using that approach. The other thing that will make a massive difference with your fat loss goal, and this is what I applied to lose over 30 pounds in 5 months, was setting myself a steps target. It's really important if we've got a goal that's centered around fat loss to ensure that our activity levels are high over the course of the week. And I think as a country, we're very sedentary, we don't move much. The average step count in the UK is something outrageous. It's like 3,000 calories, 3,000 steps. So for me, I would consistently aim from anywhere between 10 to 15,000 steps every single day. Generally, I would try and get to about 12k. I think if I look over that period of 5 months, the actual average was maybe somewhere around 13. But between 10 as a minimum would be the baseline that I would set for myself, but going to try and push as much as 15 if I could. And what you'll find with steps, and this is what I found, is the more that I could push myself on steps, the faster a rate of fat loss that I would see. So having that high activity level was super, super important for me. And personally, I chose not to add cardio into my plan. So cardio is almost like an extra tool in the toolbox that you can apply. You don't have to do cardio. I wasn't doing anything like Stairmaster or anything like that. But what you will find with cardio, if you are someone that really does struggle to get a step count in, there are a couple of things you consider. I've got a few clients that use walk-in pads now. That's a really easy way to be able to do steps at home if you struggle to get away from meetings. But cardio, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of calories burned over a certain time period. So what I mean by that is if you do 30-minute steps and you do 30 minutes on a Stairmaster, you're going to burn a lot more calories on the Stairmaster in that same 30-minute time frame. So for me, I didn't really want to do that cardio. I was happy to do the steps instead and be able to see that consistent rate of fat loss over that 5-month period. But if you're someone that just thinks there's no way I'm going to be able to do that, the first thing I would encourage you to do is to actually look at your schedule and say, where can I make some changes here? Because that's the important thing coming into this process, is you don't have to flip your entire life upside down, but you do have to be open to change and open to sacrifice as well, because ultimately you can't follow the same path that's got you to where you are today and expect to see a different result. That's just not how this process works. So a lot of the time when clients tell me there's no way I can do that amount of steps, when they actually like dig deep and start figuring out their routines and looking at what they can do, often they are able to get there using things like the steps pad, like I say. But cardio is an option that you can use instead. For example, if you only are able to get to 8,000 steps in a day, maybe adding in 3 30-minute cardio sessions might mitigate that difference between what you're not able to do and ensure that you are actually burning the same total amount of calories to push you further into that deficit that you would be doing if you were doing somewhere between 12 and 15,000 steps, for example. The other thing that I was doing, which is really important, was tracking. And there are 3 different things which I tracked, which I think made a massive difference, which were my body weight, it was progress pictures, and my calories. Now, body weight was the biggest one, so I would step on the scales every single morning before I'd had anything to eat or drink. That was really important because as soon as you've drank or you had any food, that's really going to throw off that number, especially if you're weighing yourself later in the day, digestion, all of those things considered. So I would always weigh myself first thing in the morning. I would weigh myself every single day, and what I would see when I did that was that my weight would naturally fluctuate up and down, and those fluctuations are really normal, from digestion, inflammation, all sorts of different things, water retention. But by stepping on the scales every single day, I would start to see these trends of particular days. For example, if I had a certain meal on like a Wednesday that I knew was a little bit higher in salt, I knew that on Thursday morning my weight would be slightly higher. And you'll pick up on those trends throughout the course of the week, the days where your weight will be a little bit up, the days where your weight will be a little bit down. But by taking my body weight every single day, what I would then do was use an average over the course of the week to then judge if or not I had seen like weight loss, essentially. So weigh yourself every single day. That's what I would do. And generally speaking, I was seeing a loss of around 1 kilogram a week. that was by me going on really quite a consistent and aggressive approach. I had this holiday that I wanted to prepare for. So if you were seeing a loss of anywhere from 0.5 kg, I would say that's a really good place to be. For me, I was trying to push the steps a little bit higher. I probably could have had slightly more calories, but I wanted to see results a little bit faster, and there's no right or wrong on this. But tracking my body weight every single day and just treating it as data, not something that made me emotional when I saw a particular number come up or down, allowed me to ensure that I was actually moving in the right direction and understand as well when I needed to make changes, because there were points where actually my body weight would stop coming down and things would stagnate a little bit, and that would be my cue that perhaps I needed to increase my activity levels or amend my calories to keep things moving. As well as that, the progress pictures were really helpful for me. Seeing my body weight come down gave me that idea that I was heading in the right direction. I knew things were moving, but the progress pictures for me, I think the biggest thing was actually just the motivational aspect, because when you go through any element of transformation, any dieting phase, there will inevitably be times where it's difficult. Those events, for example, that I mentioned, where you feel like you have to make sacrifice, but when you can put two pictures next to each other, that before and after, and you see that you have made physical change, you can see the differences, you can see your body fat's coming down, you can see more definition, that will give you a huge boost to keep on going, to keep pushing yourself. So taking those progress pictures is really important. I would say that I generally took mine every 2 weeks, but every 1 to 2 weeks is probably a really good target to aim for in terms of taking pictures. You won't see progress literally in every single set that you take. And I think for me, something that I found over the years is I can be super consistent in terms of I'm seeing my weight come down on the scales when I start, and I don't really feel like I'm seeing any physical changes despite the number coming down, and I'm pushing and I'm pushing, and all of a sudden there'll be this like one day where I click my fingers and I'm like, wow, okay, this has been like this really big change overnight. And I can't quite describe that process. Clients have said the same thing as well, but sometimes you just got to be consistent, take the pictures, but don't expect to see massive changes every single week. You know, monthly, I would say you'll probably expect to see changes, but having those pictures is really, really helpful. And the third thing is tracking your calories. So for me, tracking your calories, it just makes you aware that the food choices that you're having, they're aligned with your calorie goals. You know that the macro targets, you're on track with your protein, and it also really helps with just awareness of how different food choices impact you from a calorie perspective, and you can then decide, is this actually worth it? If this snack that I'm having is taking up 300 calories but it barely leaves me feeling full at all, it puts you in a pretty good place to decide if that's something that you actually want to have, or if there's another decision that you would be happy with from a food perspective but leaves you feeling a little bit more full and isn't taking up such a significant chunk of your calories, for example. I think one of the things that made the biggest difference for me personally, though, was actually just having the clarity and structure that I was doing the right thing, because when I had tried to diet in the past, I had made a lot of attempts of doing all sorts of fads, all sorts of programs. I'd be in the gym for a couple of weeks and then sack it off for a few months. But I think one of the big things as well was when I'd made attempts in the past, I actually hadn't seen any progress. And it was really important for me to have that clarity that what I was doing was actually the right thing for my goal, because I think we can all come into this process and say, okay, I'm prepared to make sacrifices, I'm prepared to make changes, but it's one thing to make sacrifice, but if you're going to do that, you want to know that that sacrifice is actually going to lead to the end goal that you want. So that mistake for me was probably not having that clarity and structure to know that I was doing the right things, and also having accountability. I've got to a point now where in terms of sticking to my plan, I think I'm pretty good at being accountable to myself, but at the start of my journey, I worked with a coach who was able to answer my questions, to tell me when I needed to push harder, to tell me when I needed to pull back, because there will inevitably be times on that journey where you decide you want to pull back, you're not sure if you want to continue, you feel like quitting. That's really normal. So when you've got someone in your corner there to push you, for me, that made a massive difference. But also, like I said, it was just that big thing of knowing you are doing the right thing, and if you continue with this, you will get to where you want to be. That is a guaranteed. You've just got to play the long game. So if you are someone that feels like you would benefit from that clarity, that structure, and also that accountability as well, head to the link in my bio and fill out the application form for one-to-one coaching. I will come back to you. I'll review your goals. I'll review where you're at the moment. I'll put together for you a personalized roadmap of exactly what you need to do to get towards your goals, so you've got that clarity. And if it's the right thing for you, I would love to help and support you to completely transform your physique.